Okay, today we start chapter 11, and that is the senses. And we will start off and take a look at what we consider as special senses. And special senses are all located in one spot. So in my cranial region, I have my hearing, my sight, my smell, and my taste. So that's 4 of the 5 senses. Those are all special senses because they're located in one specific spot. On the other hand, the general senses, what's a general sense when it's kind of all over the place? So that's our touch. So there's our 5 senses, 4 of them: hearing, smell, sight, taste. Our special senses, and general senses is touch. Another way to take a look at them is if I take a look at my cutaneous senses, that's the ones in my skin, my cutaneous layer, that's my layers of skin. Touch, heat, cold, pain, caress, those are all things that happen in my skin. I've got a whole bunch of different receptors for different jobs in my skin. Another way to take a look at it, we could take a look at what are called visceral senses. If you remember visceral muscle, that's smooth muscle. That's the ones that we don't control for the most part compared to the skeletal muscle. Some of the visceral senses, nausea, so when you have to throw up, hunger, thirst, when you have to go to the bathroom, urinate, or defecate, those are all visceral senses. Another sense we could take a look at is ESP, the extrasensory perception. We don't really look at that in this class, but some very interesting things when you take a look at that kind of study. Okay, if I take a look at some accessory organs / glands that are with the sight, because we'll start out with sight here. We'll take a look at that special sense first of all, and we'll cover that today and some diseases that go with it. First of all, I think you realize that we have tear glands, the lacrimal gland it's called, and with every blink, you are releasing some of these tears. They help lubricate the eye. There's antibacterial in them that help kill the bacteria so they don't thrive in our eyes. We also have some meibomian glands, they're called. There's oil glands, and they're kind of all over the place in my eyelid, top and bottom. When I take a look at these lacrimal glands, I have excretory ducts that will lead straight down to my eye. We took a look at the endocrine system last chapter. It's ductless, remember? Well, this would be one that has a duct, so this would be part of an exocrine system. So it's going to constantly secrete those tears into my eyes. We don't notice it, but if we have a little bit amount of those tears that are going to be drawn in the nasolacrimal gland, they'll call it sometimes, or that nasolacrimal duct. We have what are called lacrimal papillae that basically are small little holes. And if you look in the mirror and take a look at your eye, there's 2 black dots. One right here at the bottom, and then one right here at the top. You can see those if you look in the mirror. That's where the excess tears gather, and they actually drain into your nasal cavity. So if you start crying, so you have a whole bunch of tears in there, everybody knows that you get a runny nose when you cry. Why? Because it drains it into your nose. Okay. The next thing, I want to take a quick look at wavelengths and light, because we're taking a look at how we see. So if I take a look at light, we know that light travels in waves and little packets called photons, little packets of energy called photons. This top one, the black one, the wavelength is longer than my red one. The wavelength is shorter. Not great waves, but pretty good. And how do we perceive those different wavelengths? We perceive them as different colors. So we have specialized receptors that pick up color in the back of our eye. We have rods and cones. The cones are for color. I have 3 different types. I have red, blue, green that I pick up. And that's what I can, mixing those together gives me all the different colors that I can perceive and see. Do we see the entire spectrum of light? Absolutely not, and that's a good thing because I don't want to see these other things. So this is all the different frequencies, all the different things that the way the light travels. The way to the left, those are really, really, really close together. That's 10 to the negative 16th in meters. And they're very high energy, so those would be really close together in my wavelengths. And then as I go to the right on this, those wavelengths are getting larger and larger. They get up to 10 to the 8th in meters. So, the longest radio waves, they can be football fields long in one wavelength. So they're submicroscopically small to the left, up to really, really long to the right. We don't see hardly any of that spectrum. We only see this part in here. That's the visible spectrum that we can see. I don't know about you, but I don't want to see radio waves and microwaves and X-rays and gamma rays. That would be incredibly confusing. So we just see this very small amount in here. Okay, that's what we can perceive. If I take a look at the structures of the eye, and if I just go through this fairly fast, if I take a look at an eyeball, I have a very small layer on the very outside called the conjunctiva. You've heard of conjunctivitis, that's pink eye. That's an inflammation of that, and it gets really red. But that conjunctiva actually starts on my eyelid here, and then it's going to wrap around basically and form part of the eye. Just the outer region, the upper lid. I have an anterior chamber, so towards the front, it's filled with aqueous humor. And if I take a look at that, it's very, very, very liquidy. It's very, very runny. If you ever dissect an eyeball, if you poke into that, it'll squirt. The front of my eye that I can see, the clear part is the cornea. So if I touch that very front of my eye, that's the cornea. The cornea is transparent, and if I go back, it'll turn into a white part. And if I look at that, that's the sclera. So the white part of the eye is called the sclera. That sclera turns into the cornea that is clear. The pupil is the opening. That is, it's not really a structure, it's just an opening. The actual structure is the iris that controls that opening, and of course, when it gets darker, it opens up more, and when it gets lighter, more light out, it constricts it, not let as much light come through. So as light comes through, it's going to go to the lens, and the lens is what focuses the light right here. That's what bends the light indiscriminately or discriminately, I guess, on whether I'm focusing near or far. Eyelashes help keep water and stuff from getting into my eye. Lower lid to protect it. I have a posterior chamber, and that posterior chamber is going to be basically filled with what's called vitreous humor, and it, unlike the aqueous humor, it's jelly-like. It's kind of cool, but it's kind of big blob of jelly. It's not that it doesn't flow like the aqueous humor. I have suspensory ligaments that are right here that are going to hold on and adjust the diameter of the lens, which is how I focus the light on the back of my eye. Ciliary bodies are going to then attach to the ligaments, and they're going to be part of the system that contracts and lets my eye focus, lets the lens focus. Okay, I have some definite layers of the eyeball, going from the most superficial. We already said the sclera is the first layer. Inside of that, this red layer right here is called the choroid. It's highly vascularized. And then in the deepest of the three layers, and it's really, really thin, is called the retina. That back here is where all of the rods and cones are located for us to perceive light. The fovea centralis, that's where I have a huge concentration of cones. So that's where I see color. Peripherally, my peripheral vision around on the sides of that is where I'm going to have a large number of rods. And they perceive dark, black, white movements, shapes. Those are going to go out the back of my eye through the optic nerve, and I've got arteries and veins that come in through that spot too. That causes a blind spot right here. So in all actuality, there's a spot in the back of my eye where I can't focus light. And if you close one eye, do you see a blind spot? No. Why not? Because it's there. Your brain fills it in for you. Okay, that's the first little part here on the eye. We take a look at the first of all, in general, the senses, and then a little bit on light and how it travels and the differences in the different light and the visible spectrum, and then the structures of the eye. We'll stop there, and I'll continue with the next one later. You guys stay healthy, and see you soon. Bye.